Okay, everyone, we're going to start tonight's video on kind of a downer. This is a non-wrestling centric video, but this channel is predominantly about pro wrestling. So I feel like I have to bring up the bad news that we got today regarding Shad Gaspard, who unfortunately disappeared in what sounded like an incident where he and a bunch of swimmers, including his son, got swept up in the tides over at Venice Beach, California, and he was one of the ones that got lost. In that. And last I heard, the Coast Guard has given up the search for Shad, so at this point he's basically presumed dead. And that is a horrible scenario. Fortunately, his son was saved, from what I've heard, unless there's some change there. But apparently on his instructions, the Coast Guard saved his son first. And then he had a massive wave crash down on him, and he was lost after that. So, he died. By all appearances, he died with a heroic act to save his son. So, if there's anything good that came out of that, it was that. But very unfortunate and very sad, and just something that going to the beach, it's like an everyday thing, right? And not nowadays, given the situation that we're currently in, but to have something like that happen, it's really horrible and very sad. And and a lot of wrestling fans know Shad for his time as one half of Crime Time, the tag team. I'm not going to sit here and lie and say that Crime Time was my favorite act in WWE history or one of my favorite acts. There were certainly other teams throughout the course of wrestling history that I preferred and enjoyed more, but that doesn't reflect my personal feelings on the matter and the man himself, especially when situations like this happen. So my best wishes to his family and friends during this very, very horrible situation. And it's very sad. Stuff like this, and it is very sad. And this sounds like, just one of those unfortunate everyday life things. It wasn't, by all appearances, wasn't any kind of murder. It wasn't an act of violence or anything like that. It was just a very, very unfortunate thing that happened. And again, my best wishes go out to his family and friends during this hard time. So hopefully, moving on to a lighter note, couple news and notes on my videos. First of all, the Thundercats video, it will be posted on Vimeo. The way it works, though, and just full disclosure to let everyone know what's going on there. Can't post it to YouTube because of copyright garbage. And so I've opted to post it on Vimeo. However, they have an upload limit of, I believe I forget the exact number, but basically I had to split the video into 3 parts, and I'm going to be uploading it little by little once a week. And I think at this point, part 2 will go up tomorrow, and part 3 will be uploaded next week. And at that point, I can make all 3 parts available to you all. So at this point, Thundercats are on the move, but they are not loose yet. We're getting there, but the video will be up, should be up in full by next week. I will post a video on YouTube letting everybody know that it's posted on Vimeo, and then you can go check it out there to your heart's content. So, and I will include links as well, obviously. So, the only way I could have uploaded it all is one. For you all to see, I would have had to pay for an annual membership, and I'm like, I'm not paying a membership just to upload one video, even if it is, it's an hour and a half long. It's like, no, I'm not forking over $70 just to upload one video. That's not going to happen. So that was the course of action available to me, and the one that I ultimately decided to go with. So the Thundercats video will be up next week. Other non-wrestling video news, this video is actually coming before what was originally supposed to be my next Star Wars book review, but this past weekend I watched the final season of Clone Wars, so I decided to do a video about the last season of Clone Wars. I binged a lot this weekend. I binged Clone Wars, I binged The Last Dance, which stay tuned for that. I'm going to be talking about that in a future video as well. But because the last season of Clone Wars is a little bit more timely, and it's still fresh on my mind, I decided to make this video about the final season of Clone Wars on Disney+. And the book review will be pushed to sometime next week, maybe even sometime this weekend. So I'm just switching around things, just letting you all know that that's what happened. The book review, I might as well go ahead and say it now. It's going to be a comic. It's a comic series that I have an attachment to from my childhood, because unlike Dark Empire, which I didn't read as a kid, this series I did read, Crimson Empire. I will be doing the Crimson Empire series. And I actually didn't know until I read the full anthology that Crimson Empire was a trilogy and that the story continued past the first story arc. I wasn't aware that there was even more material to it, so I'll have a lot to say. And I'm looking forward to talking about that one because, again, I do have a nostalgic feeling for that comic book series, something that I didn't really have for Dark Empire because I completely missed the boat on that one. But so you'll be getting that book review. It's coming soon. But this video is going to be about the final season of Clone Wars, which debuted on Disney+. And much like The Mandalorian, I decided to just wait until the entire thing was posted and then just watch it in full rather than just watch it week by week. That way I can just binge it all at once and get it over with. And if it's not good, I could like just kind of stop in the middle and just turn it off and then come on here and rant and rave about how bad it is. And I came close at one point, to be perfectly honest. But I will say that I was very happy that we got this because I felt like Clone Wars was a show that deserved a definitive ending, especially the ending that they clearly had planned for this, which would be to have events of Clone Wars coincide with the events of Revenge of the Sith. Basically behind the scenes of Revenge of the Sith, the stuff that we didn't see during Order 66 and various other things with the characters from the Clone Wars series. And we never got that ending because of the Disney buyout, and the show got canceled on Cartoon Network. And the last episode we saw on Cartoon Network was the one where Ahsoka left the Jedi Order. And then we got like the Lost Missions, I think it was called, on Netflix, which kind of made up season 6. And that was kind of a half season, not really complete, and didn't continue the story arc with Ahsoka anyway. So it was, it's unfortunate the show just kind of got the plug pulled on it. I remember a similar thing happened. My sister, to this day, because she's a big Spider-Man nut, to this day, she is pissed off that when Disney bought out Marvel, Spectacular Spider-Man got canceled, and she's like, dude, it's the best animated Spider-Man I've ever seen, and it got taken from us because of the goddamn mouse and all this other stuff that she was upset about. So we kind of had a similar situation with Clone Wars, where we had this show that a lot of us really enjoyed, and then it got taken from us, and then Disney went on and made Rebels instead. And I have my own feelings on Rebels, which I generally enjoyed, but I still wanted like a definitive ending to Clone Wars. And I guess before I talk about the specifics of Season 7, I will talk about what I felt about the Clone Wars series. And I gotta be honest, after the 2D Clone Wars by Genndy Tartakovsky, I think I'm saying that right, who is an animation genius, by the way. I love that man's work. And his work on Clone Wars was stylistically great. Like, it's very well animated. General Grievous, it's like the best that General Grievous has ever been, is in that 2D cartoon. And it's very well executed for a bunch of like quick animated shorts. It's great. I don't think it added much in terms of character or story, because basically it's just foreshadowing a bunch of stuff that we know is going to happen. But as far as giving us quick and easy kind of action-packed shorts, I think it did the job very, very well animated and everything. It kind of reminded me in a way of the Fleischer Superman cartoons, not in style, because they don't look anything alike, but in that, like, if you just want like that adrenaline rush, quick and easy action-adventure cartoon, I think the Fleischer Superman cartoons fit that role very well. I also think the 2D Clone Wars fit that role very well. But then, after we got that, and after Revenge of the Sith had come out and the prequels had been wrapped up, work started on the 3D Clone Wars show that debuted on Cartoon Network. Well, actually, it debuted in the movie theaters with the Clone Wars movie. And I looked at it, and I was like, okay, number one, I don't like the way it looks. The visual style is kind of not pleasing to me at all, because they look like 3D animated models based on, like, marionette puppets. It looked very weird to me, and I couldn't get, watching the trailer to the Clone Wars movie, I was like, I don't like the way this looks. And initially I skipped it. Skipped the movie, skipped the series. And it wasn't until very late into season 1 that people were like, no, dude, you should really check out the show. It's actually really good. And the first episode I watched was Cad Bane's first episode, and I was like, okay, I want to watch more of this, because that was pretty cool. And sure enough, I went back and watched the entire first season, and then I was like, oh, well, damn, I should go check out the movie. Then I watched the movie, and it is, for me personally, the worst Star Wars movie ever made. And keep that in mind, I have watched the Ewok movies, and I'm including that in this list. Christmas special doesn't count. That's a TV special. But Yeah, the Clone Wars movie is really bad, like astonishingly terrible, and everything I thought was going to be wrong with the cartoon show is in that movie. Specifically, the character of Ahsoka Tano, and I guess I'll talk about her now. I had a lot of worries about Ahsoka initially when the whole thing was being developed, because I looked at him like, okay, they're giving Anakin a Padawan. That kind of breaks continuity a little bit with the movies, but also it's like, oh my god, she's going to be the annoying, like, Robin-esque sidekick. Or like, even worse, like, in my mind, it was like, oh my god, is this going to be Scrappy Doo with a lightsaber? Is this what we have to look forward to? And, people, get all tied up about, like, the fears of her being a Mary Sue, and which they could have easily fallen into that trap with her as well. So I just pictured her being really, really annoying, and when you watch the show, that doesn't really come across. And she actually ended up being the heart of the show, and the kind of the main component that made it work. Now, the movie, she's terrible, because everybody's terrible in the movie. And she was the annoying kid sidekick. And I'm like, oh god, thank god I watched the show before I watched the movie, because I would not have gone back and watched the show if I had started off with the movie. But she called R2-D2 R2-y, and I was like, shut the fuck up. Just watching the movie, I'm like, shut up, I hate you. But again, thank God I watched the show before the movie, or else and thank God the R2-y thing didn't stick. That's great. But no, she ended up, the show ended up being about, like, her growth from Anakin's little rebellious Padawan to being a competent leader in Jedi herself. And that was great to see. And because she's not present for the events of Revenge of the Sith, that made a lot of us go, well, what happened to her? Does Anakin kill her when he becomes Darth Vader? Like, is she another victim of Anakin's fall to the dark side? Is she a leading factor in Anakin falling to the dark side? Is she going to fall to the dark side too? Because she is, personality-wise, she actually is very similar to Anakin in a lot of ways. She's got his kind of hard-headedness and his impetuous nature, and which is kind of funny if you watch the show, and he's trying to, like, coach her out of those bad habits. It's like, dude, you do the same shit. And Obi-Wan's like, yeah, don't like it, do you, Anakin? And Anakin, of course, is much better in the Clone Wars 3D show, instead of the whiny baby that we saw in the movies. And even the 2D Clone Wars, we get, like, a character closer to how I envisioned Anakin, which is, like, this cocky action-adventure war hero that is sure of himself and super confident and everything else. And that what we saw in Clone Wars is closer to how I would have expected Anakin to be. And I think that's the advantage that the 3D Clone Wars show has over the 2D one, where it was able to kind of expand on characters and give them a little bit more. We find out more about Obi-Wan Kenobi's backstory, which is not something I never needed, but what they ended up giving him and tying him into Satine and her role in Mandalore and all that. Now, I don't dare spoil any of that. That was all really well handled and very good. And they took a character like Asajj Ventress, who was just girl Darth Maul in the 2D cartoon, and they expanded on her and evolved her from villain to anti-hero by the end of the series, and she turned out great. They introduced Cad Bane, who was basically the bounty hunter character that we all wanted Boba Fett to be, but never really got. And they did a bunch of... They even made Boba Fett as a kid kind of work, because they did this one episode where he's on a Star Destroyer trying to murder Mace Windu, and they know it's one of the clones, and they pretty much figured out that it's Boba Fett, but they don't know which one he is, because they're all, like, clone kid trainees on the ship, so they have to find out which one is the murderer, and it's like, that was actually pretty interesting. And we see Boba Fett grow up a little bit and start to become, like, the bounty hunter he's supposed to be, so... They kind of took a dumb idea I didn't like in the prequels and made it work. And they did a lot of things like that in Clone Wars. Now, not everything that Clone Wars did was gold. They did do a few episodes that centered on Jar Jar Binks, which, holy hell, we didn't need that. They did a story arc about the D Squad, which was about, like, a droid unit that was going in and performing all these espionage missions for the Republic. R2-D2 was in the group. But it was led by these two really annoying characters that kind of dragged the entire thing down. And honestly, I think the D-Squad thing could have worked if none of the droids talked. And if it was just R2-D2 sound effects the whole time. I think it would have been great if it was just those characters for 4 episodes. But instead, we got, like, annoying people talking the whole time. I'm like, ugh. But, so that one didn't really work. But the big Godzilla reference episode, the Zillo Beast, which was a two-parter, I believe, that was great. I obviously enjoyed the hell out of that. It's like, oh, there's references to Godzilla and Rodan and King Kong, and you get this giant monster running amok on Coruscant. I'm like, somebody working on this show just gets me. It just absolutely gets me. It's the closest I'll ever get to a Godzilla Star Wars crossover, but man, I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed that. So I definitely enjoyed most of Clone Wars, and even stuff that looks stupid on paper, like bringing Darth Maul back, which I was wholeheartedly against. I was like, don't do that. That's stupid. But they even made that work by fleshing out Darth Maul, because before in the movies, he's just a cool-looking, badass character that never talks. And in Clone Wars, he becomes like this tortured, abandoned, vengeful psychopath who is just obsessed with killing Obi-Wan Kenobi and ruining his life. And they got some mileage out of that. And I was like, oh my God, they made Darth Maul awesome in this show. This is great. And they got a lot of mileage out of a bunch of things in this show. And they did a lot of things really, really well. And I've recommended the Clone Wars show to a lot of people. And it's one of the reasons I was upset that it got canceled when it did without us really getting an ending to it. I guess you could say Ahsoka leaving the Jedi kind of serves as an ending, or it can serve as an ending, because she does show up in Rebels. And you could kind of fill in the blanks yourself. You don't really need anything in between there, but it's still like, and Rebels overall I enjoyed. I won't say it was great overall, but there was stuff I did enjoy, like the use of Grand Admiral Thrawn. It was great, and the build up to Ahsoka and Vader I thought was really well done, and the stuff with Darth Maul was really well done, and his final showdown with Kenobi was well done too. So there was stuff to enjoy in Rebels, but I would have preferred that Clone Wars had been allowed to wrap up before they jumped into a new show. And I'll use that to kind of touch upon my feelings on the final season. So with all of that said, what were my thoughts on the final season of Clone Wars? Well, it's divided into 3 story arcs, and that's kind of how I'm going to review it. It's 12 episodes, 3 4-episode arcs. The first one largely centered on the Bad Batch, which are a group of clones, like a squad of clones who are like irregulars. They have irregular abilities. One is super strong, one is super smart, so he's like the tech guy, and various other things like that. One has heightened senses, so he's like a good scout and hunter. There's one that was, the leader of the group is designed to look like Rambo, which I certainly appreciated. And Rex, Captain Rex, who's like the main clone in Clone Wars. And that's another aspect of the Clone Wars show I always liked, that they gave the clones individual personalities. And so basically Rex is along with these, irregular clones, and he's leading a mission to go save Echo, who is one of the other main clones and a close friend of Rex, who we had thought had been killed earlier, but they did an arc to go save him and everything. And I feel like I just gave away a spoiler by doing that. But that arc captured like the action adventure fun that Clone Wars did, with a little bit of a darker edge. That the show would delve into as well. The show was not afraid to like kill people or torture people or do things that are a little bit edgier. And I felt like, for the most part, this last season recaptured the look and feel and presentation of the show. So it was almost like once we got started, it was like, wow, they didn't miss a beat. They're right back into it like a glove. It was almost like it was yesterday. It's like it felt like it belonged with the Clone Wars series. And this arc was a good one to start off with, to kind of like give us something familiar, give us something that felt like it could have been part of the original show, and I felt like it delivered, and I thought it was good. I won't say it's like among the best things that Clone Wars has ever done, but as far as easing us in back into the show, I thought it did its job perfectly, and I thought it was very good. And then we go to the second story arc, which details Ahsoka and what she's been doing since leaving the Jedi. And we see that she gets partnered up with these 2 sisters that run like a how do I want to phrase it? Like a garage, like a car repair, like the Star Wars equivalent of a car repair shop in Coruscant's like lower levels and lower economic areas. And the older sister's kind of a little bit shadier and makes some shady deals and gets everybody wrapped up in this horrible scenario where they wind up tied up with this organized crime thing. And the whole idea of giving Ahsoka like an arc to show like what she was doing between Revenge of the Sith and leaving the Jedi, good idea. And even this idea isn't bad necessarily. The problem that drags the entire arc down, Trace, who's like the good sister, the younger sister, who like befriends Ahsoka, and her older sister are annoying. Like, really annoying. To the point where every episode that ended on a cliffhanger to lead into the next episode of the arc, I'm like, oh my god, this arc is still going. No, why? And I was like, dude, I'm considering like looking up an episode guide. Okay, when does this arc end? Please tell me the rest of the season is not this. Because I had nothing spoiled for me going into this season, so I didn't know how it ended or anything. And I thought, oh God, are these two sisters here for the long haul? Are they going to be here for the rest of the season? Thankfully, they are not. They're only in for episodes 5 to 9. And, I think part of the problem that there wasn't enough story to make it to 4 episodes, because there's a point where they break out of prison from the organized crime unit. And then the episode ends with them right back in their prison cells. I'm like, all right, so that episode was completely pointless. We're right back where we started. And the two sisters are constantly arguing with each other and having the exact same arguments with Ahsoka over and over and over again. And they do really stupid and annoying things. And I'm like, oh my God, this is such a waste of time and a waste of Ahsoka. Like, what is going on right now? And if the goal was to do like a female-driven, like, Clone Wars arc, I mean, I'm okay with that, but could you not make 2/3 of the main characters completely insufferable? Could you not do that? Could you please not make me want to rip my hair out watching these two and listening to these two and making me feel sorry for Ahsoka that she's tied to these two? Fortunately, well, let me wrap up this arc first. This arc was terrible, and I was happy when it was over. So we started off good with the Bad Batch stuff, and then we went right to crap with this middle portion. I'm like, oh my God, can the season bounce back? Can we bounce back from this? And fortunately, yes, we get the Revenge of the Sith arc that basically is the ending that the show always deserved, where we get to see Ahsoka driven back into the Clone Wars as she deals with an incident on Mandalore caused by Darth Maul. And this is concurrent with the events of Revenge of the Sith. And very, very interesting stuff all around here. Turns out Darth Maul started this uprising on Mandalore to lure Anakin Skywalker away from Coruscant and to kill him to prevent the Emperor's big... because he knew that Anakin was the chosen one and that he'd been groomed by Emperor Palpatine. And he knew that shit was going to go south in a hurry, and he wanted to lure Anakin over to Mandalore and kill Kenobi as well, because he's obsessed with killing Kenobi, which is a great character trait. I love that. But Ahsoka winds up being pulled back in by the Mandalorians that want to overthrow Maul. So they bring Ahsoka back in, and she gets back together with her clone troopers, and there's this wonderful moment where the clone troopers know she's back, and they like paint their helmets to kind of look like her, and it's like the Ahsoka unit, and Rex is there, and it's great, and it's wonderful, but because we're into the events of Revenge of the Sith, that stuff is going to go south in a hurry. And since this is the final story arc of Clone Wars, I will bring up that one thing I'm glad about with this season, they didn't feel the need to shoehorn any characters in there, like the ones that they had made famous. Like, they didn't shoehorn Cad Bane in there, they didn't shoehorn Asajj Ventress in there, they didn't shoehorn that space pirate guy, Hondo. Any of the characters that they had made work and got over, I guess you could say, during the course of the series. They didn't turn the last season into like a reunion party or anything like that. And I was happy to see that. I was like, okay, they just told the stories that they wanted to tell and didn't feel anchored by previous events of the show or previous characters that they had established in the show. It's like they knew that Ahsoka needed to be the focus. They needed to do the Revenge of the Sith stuff. And they did. And to that end, I thought it worked very, very well. It was kind of cute to see them tie into the events of Revenge of the Sith. There's the Jedi meeting where Ki-Adi-Mundi is like, the Chancellor must be forced from office, and Windu's like, the Jedi will have to assume control of the Senate for a smooth transition, and Yoda's like, oh, a dark place this is taking us, and blah, blah, blah. Ahsoka walks in immediately after that conversation. They continue having the conversation with Ahsoka, which I thought that was kind of funny. You get to see where these events kind of layer in and tie in with the events of Episode 3. We do get to see Anakin and Ahsoka's reunion and final meeting before Anakin's turn to the dark side. And again, if you this actually made a pretty good companion piece to Revenge of the Sith. I wonder if like some fan will make like a supercut of like these 4 episodes and Revenge of the Sith, and just even though it would make no sense because half of it's animated and half of it's not, but it would it would be interesting if a fan did that. I could see somebody doing that at some point, but. So that was fun to see, and it was cool to see like Ahsoka back into the fray and dealing with Darth Maul, and their interactions are great. They have a lightsaber fight on Mandalore, which is kind of the end of the uprising on Mandalore, and great fight there and some great dialogue as well. And then that leads to Maul being imprisoned and defeated by Ahsoka, and then as they're carrying him on what is basically a Star Destroyer, Order 66 is activated, and Ahsoka finds herself trapped on a ship with a bunch of clones that want to kill her. And she has to find out what's going on and survive. And all of that is very tense. And, you know, when you've got Rex and Ahsoka and Darth Maul all running around this ship, and creates a lot of great action, a lot of great tension. And in some ways, it's almost exactly how I would have envisioned Ahsoka dealing with the events of Order 66 and everything that happened. And if I have any negatives of the final story arc, there are a few moments where they reference the movies a little bit too obviously. And what I mean by that, like, there's a scene where Ahsoka starts chanting, "I am one with the Force is with me," like from Rogue One, and that felt a little forced. There's a scene where Darth Maul is interrogating somebody and he does it like Kylo Ren, and that feels a little forced. And it feels like, you know, if Red Letter Media was doing this review, they would play the George Lucas clip. It's like poetry. It's like that they rhyme. It felt like kind of some of those references felt a little forced to me, but forced pun. That's a minor nitpick more than anything else. And I guess my biggest problem with it is that, you know, for all the tense drama that's in there and like all the close calls that Ahsoka has during the course of this, and deciding to kind of let Darth Maul cause chaos on the ship just to cause a distraction so she can get out of there. And all this great stuff happening. The fact that I've already seen Rebels, and Rebels has already come out, and I know that Ahsoka survives, I know that Darth Maul survives, and I know that Rex survives, to get them to the events of Rebels, it really undercuts the drama a little bit, because I know they all 3 of them have to make it off that ship alive. And it just goes back to what I said before. It's like, I wish they had just been allowed to wrap up the show after Disney bought it. Just give them the ending that they deserved. And that's an unfortunate side effect of this, is like, I wish this season had come out before Rebels. And I wish Disney had never canceled the show in the first place. And that's really the biggest negative. Well, the biggest negative is that middle story arc, which is garbage. But my biggest criticism with even doing this season is like, I wish you all had done this before Rebels. But as is, I thought that the last story arc was great. I thought it closed up the series great, and it gave Clone Wars the ending it deserved. And to that end, the last scene in particular, I think is very, very good. Very strong stuff. So, you know, 3 story arcs, 2 I liked, 1 I really liked, 1 I absolutely hated, but, you know, you can skip. The best thing I can say about that middle story arc is that it is easily skippable. You can go watch episodes 1 through 4, then just skip to episode 9, and you're fine. And you just keep watching from there. Don't even bother watching that middle portion because it's god-awful and terrible and just a waste of time. So, last season of Clone Wars, I'm glad we got it. It's cool that we got it under the circumstances. And that last story arc, I really, really liked and enjoyed. It's some great, good old Star Wars goodness, and closed out Clone Wars appropriately, I thought. Now, there are some things I'm hearing fans complain about. Like, some fans don't like that the stormtroopers, the clone troopers, had, like, chips that force them to open. They're, like, in their brain or their back of their head or something. I forget where it was. But they have chips that, like, forces them to follow the Emperor's command. So when he orders Order 66, they can't disobey. And so Ahsoka has to go through this process where she's like, has to figure out what's going on, and she takes the chip out of Rex, and so that gets Rex back on her side and everything. And some fans don't like that the clone troopers just aren't acting on orders, and like they were always going to follow those orders, and that they're not acting on their free will. I can see that being a complaint, but I think the clone troopers in this series had become so likable that them like callously murdering all their Jedi friends would have seemed a little odd. And maybe a little weird for the writers at that point, because Rex and Cody and Fives and those guys, they were very likable characters, so I can understand why they wrote that the way they did. And also it creates a great scene when Ahsoka figures out what's going on and tries to get Rex to help her. They also have some droid buddies helping them out too, which that's kind of fun. Yeah, I really liked the last 4 episodes. I thought it was great and represented the show at its best. Unfortunately, if nothing else, the show got the ending it deserved. So to that end, I say I give the season a thumbs up. 4 episodes are easily skippable, but when you watch the good stuff and you focus on the positive, very good stuff all around. So that concludes my review of Clone Wars. I never thought I would ever get a chance to really review the series or any portion of the series. So if nothing else, I'm glad that this season came out just to give me an opportunity to come on here and talk about it, because it is a show that I personally really enjoyed. And I'd say it's the second best Star Wars TV show behind The Mandalorian, which Mandalorian, man, that show, it tapped into everything that I like so well. Like that you want to talk about a show that understands me. The Mandalorian totally understands me. It's how I always envisioned a Boba Fett movie without it actually being Boba Fett, but I'll take it. But Clone Wars is very good, and if you have Disney Plus, I recommend watching the entire show. Again, fully understanding not everything is grade A material. There's plenty of crap in there, but I'd have to go over the episode guide again to kind of point out which episodes to watch and which ones not to. I'm not prepared to do that right now, but not every episode's a winner, but the winners get a huge thumbs up and are definitely worth watching. So that concludes this review. Thanks again, everybody, for watching, and I will be back with more videos throughout the next few weeks because I'm in quarantine, and what the hell else am I going to do? So goodbye, everyone. Stay safe, and I'll see you all later.